Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of English Mastery. I'm William, and today we're going to dive into some of the most common mistakes people make when speaking and writing in English. Whether you're just starting to learn English or you've been speaking it for years, it's likely you've encountered these errors. And guess what? Even native speakers fall into these traps. But no worries, by the end of this episode, you'll have clear strategies to avoid them. Let's jump right into one of the most frequent mistakes, the confusion between your and your. This one gets almost everyone at some point. It's such an easy mistake to make because these two words sound identical, but they have very different meanings. Your is a possessive adjective. It shows ownership, like in the sentence, "Your shoes are by the door." On the other hand, your is a contraction of you are. So, for example, you might say, "You're really good at learning languages." The trick to fixing this is simple. When writing, just pause and ask yourself, could I replace your with you are? If so, you've got it right. If it doesn't make sense, like in "I love your cooking," then your is the correct choice. This little step can save you from making a common mistake. Next up is another one that throws people off. The infamous there, and there. These homophones are especially tricky because they sound exactly the same but mean completely different things. They refers to a location, as in, the book is over there. There is possessive, showing ownership, like, their dog is very friendly. And finally, there is a contraction, for they are, like they're going to the park. One way to avoid this mistake is to break down the sentence and think about what you're referring to. If you're talking about a place, it's there. If you're talking about possession, it's there. And if you can replace it with "they are" and the sentence still works, then it's there. A simple but effective way to avoid this common pitfall is to read your sentences out loud. If it sounds strange, you might have used the wrong one. Now let's talk about the confusion between less and fewer. I see this mistake everywhere, from social media posts to professional documents. Here's the deal. Fewer is used for things you can count, while less is used for things that can't be counted. For example, you should say, "I have fewer books than last year, but there's less water in the bottle." The best way to remember this is to ask yourself, can I count it? If the answer is yes, use fewer. For instance, fewer people, fewer hours, fewer cookies. If the answer is no, if it's something uncountable, like water, air, or time, then go with less. This small tweak will make your English sound much more precise. Speaking of countable and uncountable things, let's move on to the difference between much and many. People often say, "I have much friends," but that's incorrect. It should be, "I have many friends." The rule is simple. Use many with countable nouns and much with uncountable nouns. For example, you can say, "I have many books," but not, "I have much books." Instead, you'd say, "I don't have much time." Here's a quick tip. If you can add a number before the noun, like 2 books or 5 friends, then many is the right choice. If you can't count it, like happiness or milk, then much is the way to go. This little adjustment can make your sentences sound more natural and fluent. Now, one of the most misunderstood pairs in English, I versus me. It's so common to hear people say, "Me and John went to the store," but that's not correct. The right way to say it is, "John and I went to the store." The confusion usually happens because people think "me" sounds informal, but there's a simple rule to follow. When you're the subject of the sentence, meaning you're the one doing the action, use I. For example, "I went to the meeting." But if you're the object of the sentence, meaning the action is being done to you, use me. For instance, "The teacher gave the homework to John and me." One easy trick to avoid this mistake is to remove the other person from the sentence and see which word sounds right. You wouldn't say, "Me went to the store," so you know that John and I is correct. On the flip side, you wouldn't say, "The teacher gave it the assignment," so you know it should be me. Moving on to a tricky pair. It's and its. This can trip up even the most experienced writers. Is with an apostrophe is a contraction for it is or it has. Without the apostrophe, it's is possessive, meaning it shows ownership. For example, the company updated its policy, no apostrophe. But you would say, it's going to rain later, with an apostrophe for it is. A good rule of thumb is to substitute it is or it has in your sentence. If it makes sense, use its. If it doesn't, go with its. This one's all about clarity and careful proofreading. Another common issue is the misuse of good and well. People often say things like, I did good on the test, but it should be, I did well. The difference is that good is an adjective, and it describes nouns. So you'd say, he is a good singer. But well is an adverb, so it describes how something is done. That's why you'd say, she performed well on the exam. Here's a quick way to fix this. If you're talking about a person, place, or thing, use good. If you're describing an action, go with well. It's a small change, but it makes your speech and writing more polished. And let's not forget about the sneaky double negatives. I hear this mistake in casual speech all the time, people saying, I don't have no time, when what they really mean is, I don't have any time. The problem with double negatives is that they cancel each other out, making your sentence confusing or even the opposite of what you mean. To fix this, just avoid using two negatives in the same sentence. Instead of saying, I can't find nothing, say, I can't find anything. It's clearer and grammatically correct. Last but not least, let's tackle affect versus effect. This one's a bit tricky because both words are closely related, but they serve different roles. Affect is typically a verb, meaning to influence something. For example, the rain affected our plans. On the other hand, effect is usually a noun, referring to the result of a change. For example, the new law had a positive effect on the environment. Here's a handy trick to remember. Affect is an action, and effect is an end result. So when you're talking about influencing something, use affect. When you're talking about the outcome of that influence, use effect. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you found these tips helpful. Remember, making mistakes is part of the learning process, so don't be too hard on yourself if you slip up. The key is to be mindful of these common errors, and practice the small fixes we've talked about. Over time, you'll notice your English improving dramatically. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out on social media or drop an email. Until next time, keep practicing and improving your English every day. Don't forget to subscribe my channel.